Hey, this is Julian Rosen from Common Sage, and you're listening to The New Scene.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to The New Scene. I am your host, Keith, and we're back with another brand new episode. And on the show this week, we have drummer Luke Garro, the drummer of Fastbreak, who just re-released their debut LP, Fast Cars, Fast Women, and it's on vinyl for the first time in 26 years on Iodine Recordings. He also drummed for In My Eyes, so we talk all about that band and their iconic cover art for their LP, The Difference Between. And Luke also drums for Piebald, who recently signed to Iodine Recordings, re-released their classic LP, We Are the Only Friends We Have, and Luke shares an exciting Piebald update with us. We also have our Artist Spotlight interview of the month with Larry Hundertmark of the Phantom Eye, a New York City psychedelic post-metal trio who recently released a new EP called Cymatic Waves. So make sure you stick around until the end of the episode to hear from Larry. It's a great episode, and that's all coming up shortly. But first, here's how you can support The New Scene. Rate us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We have a main channel with full video episodes and a clips channel with clips from select episodes. We have shirts for sale at our store at Deathwish Inc. Pick one up. It's a great way to support the show. And you can follow us on social media at New Scene Pod. Also, don't forget to support Iodine Recordings. My band Memory Entry just announced our debut EP, Our World Is Going to Disappear. It's a co-release between Iodine Recordings and Mind Over Matter Recordings. The Iodine variant is just about sold out, and the Mind Over Matter variant is going quick, so pick one up today. The second pressing of Piebald's We Are the Only Friends We Have is up right now from Iodine Recordings. Get it while it lasts, because it won't. Join the Iodine Noise Cult. An annual membership is $300, or get a monthly membership for $28 a month. You'll get every Iodine vinyl release in 2025. There's a new line of Big Wheel Recreation merch available in the Iodine Recordings store. Pick something up today. And Dead Bars have record release shows with Rebuilder. April 18th in Boston, April 19th in New York City, and April 26th in Seattle, Washington. The 25th anniversary repress of Heartbreak's Got Backbeat by 6 Going on 7 is out right now. Pick it up in the Iodine store. For more information, head to iodinerecordings.com, and you can follow the label on Instagram at Iodine Recordings. Also, don't forget to support our sponsor for the month of February, Equal Vision Records. Founded in 1990, Equal Vision are a staple in our scene, bringing us the latest and greatest in independent music with an unbeatable legacy roster. And here's some updates from the label. Have you checked out the new LP from New York post-hardcore band Common Sage? It's called Closer To, and it's excellent. Anne Berlin recently released a new single called High Stakes, and there's a music video to accompany the new single. Check it out on YouTube. May will be touring with the Rocket Summer beginning in March. Check their page or the EVR page for a full list of dates. Keonashi have tour dates coming up with Crystal Lake in March. Check their page or the EVR page for a full list of dates. And don't forget to pick up the Quicksand Hot Water Music split, Vows by Hot Water Music, and the 25th anniversary reissue of It All Comes Down to This by Bane. Those are must-listen records. Head to equalvision.com for more updates, and you can follow the label on Instagram at Equal Vision. All right, so don't forget, we have our Artist Spotlight interview at the end of the show with the Phantom Eye, but right now, we are going to kick things off with Luke Garro of Piebald, In My Eyes, and Fastbreak. Enjoy. All right, we are here now with Luke Garro. Luke, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Keith.
Yes, Luke, it's great to have you here. You know, I've been listening to you in various bands over the years now for many years, and there's exciting things happening. We've got a repress of Fast Cars, Fast Women out from Fastbreak. Piebald is on Iodine Recordings now. There's all kinds of things to discuss. But first, Luke, I want to ask you, how are you doing today?
I am doing good. I'm excited for this. 2025 has been a great year so far in terms of just the projects I have going on and everything else. So I have no complaints. I'm excited to be talking with you.
That's great. That's great. Do you have any specific goals in mind for 2025? It's a new year. We're in the beginning part of the new year, so I'm curious where people stand with this.
Yeah, I absolutely do. I am a list maker. I notoriously make lists for everything in my life, whether it's work or personal or related to my homestead. And I love taking things off those lists. But it seems like for years now, I've just been adding. And I'd like to turn the corner on that and start to cross more things off than I add. And it does feel like I'm finally getting there. We'll talk more about it, but Piebald has rounded a corner, and that's been exciting. And Fastbreak, which has been not on my radar forever up until halfway through last year, is now back to something that I can consider another project on the old proverbial list there. So my big goal this year is to keep making progress. Don't expect perfection, but strive for the best you can do, and hopefully get a little peace of mind in putting some of the things that have been long-term projects back into the rearview mirror.
That's great. How do you keep your lists? And I love to hear this. I'm a list guy myself. I have a series of Google Sheets that I track a lot of things in. I have notepads and notepad documents on the computer where I put my daily list and try to cross the things off I need to do for the day. How do you organize yours?
Yeah, this could be its own podcast. So it's a variety of ways. So I'm probably not too dissimilar from you, where my work ones are very much in a deliverable format. So it's usually a Google spreadsheet, and I have multiple tabs based on the category of task that needs to happen. And then I have my kind of personal work list that I know is never deliverable. It's just a text doc open right on my computer desktop. So anytime something pops in my head, I throw it on there. That's usually the you have to get it done today or else list. And then there's always the old pencil and paper. I have a ton of pieces of paper around. And then on my phone, I'll just use like just a note as usually my personal stuff. And usually that relates to I live on a 3-acre farm, and we have all sorts of animals and whatnot. And there's a never ending list of projects. So usually the stuff on that list is like stuff related to literally like pruning trees or dealing with animals.
A 3-acre farm, where?
We are in Ludlow, Massachusetts, which is right outside of Springfield, so Western Mass, for those people that know this area. It's not super rural, and it's definitely it's definitely not a city by any stretch. It's probably you've got 22,000 people population, but I live on one of those winding roads where you could tell at some point it was all farmhouses, and then there's 6 to 7 houses built between every farm now. And I have one of the remaining farmhouses with giant barn and everything that before we moved here, the owner had split it up, going all the way back to he lived here in the 1960s through, but split it up into like 30 lots. So I have the last 3 acres left of what was once a 40+ acre farm.
Wow. How did you end up moving to a farm? Was this a goal? Was this on your list?
Yeah, absolutely. It was 2009. I was living in Brighton, which is a suburb of Boston, and was finally at a point in my life where I thought I could afford a home. And then I was looking all around Boston and realized I cannot afford a home there. And I happen to have a friend, one of my best friends, Don Raymond, who is the bass player of Fastbreak. He was also in this band called The Format for a while. He's one of my best friends, and his wife is from this town. And so were living here at the time, and just randomly, my wife had found a listing for this small farm, and we joked that we would never be able to move 90 minutes outside of Boston because I was working there at the time. And then the more we looked at houses around Boston, the more we realized this was such a dream place to live just because it had so much space and everything. And we loved gardening and whatnot. So it just got to a point where all of a sudden I'm like, if I don't get that, I think I'm going to be regretting it. And then we finally just went for it, and I have no regrets. So yeah, really it was about timing in life, and then just wanting kind of space and my own freedom. And then as a drummer, having a place that I could set my drums up.
That's key. Yes. How long have you been married?
2009. So same year. So yeah, going on, what is that? 15? Yeah. We just had our 15th last September.
Any kids?
Got one. She's 14. She's awesome. Her name's Olive. She is super into like 1800s living. So she loves going to like Sturbridge Village and stuff. And she loves dressing up like she's living in the 1800s, and she's constantly knitting or crocheting. And she is that daughter that won the daughter lottery, which is she has not one, but two ponies. So I feel like I better be golden at this point. But yeah, she's amazing, and it's awesome having a kid who's now 14 because like we can just hang out like friends. It's pretty cool.
That's awesome. What do you do outside of music to make ends meet?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I'm the general manager of Noble and Cooley, which is a drum company. It's the oldest drum manufacturer in America, been around since 1854. Literally was making drums for the Civil War. So they were making military drums. And then, got into professional drum making in the 80s. And then now that's what we're known for. We do steam bent single ply solid shell snare drums, which are like the holy grail of snare drums. And so I'm the general manager. It's a small company. It's about 6-7 of us. And the rest of the guys make drums, and I have to wear every other hat that I can get my little mitts on.
That's got to be good to have the day job still involved in music, right?
Yeah, it's certainly a blessing that when something comes up in my life, there's kind of multiple angles I could take to connect it. And certainly using my background of just having been on tour, knowing a lot of people in the industry certainly helps when we're looking for, artists to potentially work with or whatnot. And then anytime I've needed to go play a festival or go on a short tour, which has been few and far between at this point in my life, there's kind of no question about it. And in fact, the last festival we did, which is Best Friends Forever in Vegas, I talked to several drummers. I sold at least one drum set from being there and playing the company's drum. So it does help to be able to be like, look, not only am I the hair club president, I'm also a client. If anyone gets that reference there. But yeah, no, it certainly is a nice thing because I know a lot of musicians, if you've been a musician for a while and you haven't, quote unquote, made it to that point where you're just living off what you do, you have to have some sort of side hustle. And usually that's bartending or something of that nature. So to be able to actually work with an instrument manufacturer, especially a drum company, is, I truly feel blessed for that.
Yeah, and great to be out in the field and be able to sell too, right? Do people ever see your drums and they're like, what are those? I need those.
100%. Because it's a very premium company, and I know a lot of people would love to have our drums, but since it's all handmade in America using really high quality parts, we're kind of in that upper echelon of drums. So people who know the company, when they see them, their eyes light up. Like sound guys go nuts when they see me pull the bass drum out of the case and they see the name on it, they go nuts. And then people who don't know look at them and go, wow, those must be really nice, and they'll want to hear them and whatnot. And so yeah, it's almost like a product that sells itself, where you don't need to convince people that they're great. That people look at them and they go, those are Noble and Cooley drums. Wow. It's just kind of the timing in life on if it were a car, it would be like buying a high-end BMW or something like that. So it's for people that are at a certain level with their professional music career to be able to get these, for sure.
Where did you grow up?
So I am born and raised in Connecticut, Glastonbury, Connecticut. Good old Glastonbury, which is just outside of Hartford. Just your kind of typical Connecticut suburb. So right now I'm not too far from there. I'm about 45 minutes away. And I never really ventured too far. I mean, I did live in Los Angeles for a year. But other than that, I spent most of my time in Boston. That was kind of like my home city, since Connecticut really, I really couldn't claim Hartford or New Haven as the cities that I wanted to be in. No offense to those two wonderful cities, but yeah, growing up, it was kind of like New York or Boston. Which should I go to? And enough of my friends were heading up to Boston for college and whatnot, so that's where I went to.
When did you live in Los Angeles?
So it was about a year after I joined Piebald. We all moved out as a band. That was quote unquote our going for it phase, where that's all we were doing. And we lived there. It was probably October of 2002 to October of 2003, I think is when we were there. It's it was quite a blur, and it's been long enough that I'm hoping that's accurate. But yeah, a little over 22 years ago or so, and it was just a solid year. And even during that year, we toured probably for 6 months. So we weren't there for all that long, but it was kind of your kind of quintessential existence. We all lived in the same house with our tour manager Ryan McGaffigan, who was awesome. So it was the five of us in a house up on a hill in Los Feliz, kind of living the dream, because it was when we weren't touring, we were rehearsing, maybe 5 days a week, and then just inviting people over our house and playing games of Risk that lasted till 3 a.m. in the morning, and usually got into some sort of heated argument over who was cheating and who wasn't. But yeah, it's kind of the party house in that sense.
That sounds like a lot of fun. We used to do that too, the all-night games of Risk. I missed that.
They can drag out, it's like you think you're getting near the end of one, and then it's just the luck of how the game keeps going. But yeah, it was certainly such a fun thing to do, and such fond memories of everyone just sitting down, and we're all drinking some beer or whatever, and just like, I'm like, this is like full on adulting, it feels like. The musicians staying home playing Risk.
Why only a year out in Los Angeles?
I think some of us weren't totally into the vibe out there. Just the people are very different from the people that you grow accustomed to in New England. Constantly meeting people who are out to get something, and we just didn't feel like we genuinely fit there. But surprisingly, we all left. And then as soon as we all left, two of the guys went back. Some of it had to do with a lady. Some of it had to do with just wanting to be not living with your parents in Massachusetts. So yeah, half the band went back. And that was actually a moment that has never changed for Piebald, where that, as soon as two people went back, we never, ever were in the same spot ever again up to this point.
Oh, wow. Wow. Yeah, I want to circle back to that, but let's take it back to Connecticut first. You're growing up. Is music something you've always been interested in?
My parents were hippies, so I have fond early memories of listening to Beatles records, probably as soon as I was learning to walk and whatnot. And then I was what I'd say is a late bloomer for actually adopting an instrument. I had an acoustic guitar that my grandma had got for me, but that was just something that I kind of tapped away on, and never really was taking lessons or anything. And then freshman year of high school, started to just get into the more alternative stuff, so skateboarding and whatnot. And we were lucky to have friends that were juniors and seniors in high school, and they started taking us to the local Connecticut shows. And then immediately, my group of friends, it was me and these two guys that were my best friends. One of them bought a guitar, and then within weeks, the other one bought a guitar. And then I was like, you know what? Sounds like drums for me. So I immediately bought drums, and my parents, I guess, had that lucky role of having the drummer in their house and allowing us to rehearse there. So yeah, it was kind of, organic in the sense that I grew up being a soccer player, and then kind of immediately once I got to high school, I gravitated towards things like skateboarding, and then quickly went to shows and quickly had instruments. And then never was in any sort of mindset where I was like, we need to get really good at these. It was like literally playing shows within a month of having them, trying out for the Battle of the Bands at the high school. And even like, I remember, spending like $250 to record a cassette demo within months of getting our instruments. So we were all about like getting out there and playing, and it being like part of our identity. Between skateboarding and playing instruments. And then because of the friends that we had and the subcultures we were into, the shows we were going to were, I would say they're border. I don't even think they were hardcore shows necessarily to begin with. They were whatever bands were playing out in Connecticut. And then naturally that progressed into getting into hardcore more. And within a year or so, we were all straight edge and, became vegan too. And that was a long part of my life. But yeah, I feel like I was just very into wanting to be in a band and wanting to get out there and play, more so than being like, I'm going to make sure I become the best drummer, that I can become, which is just kind of followed me. And still to this day, I'm like, I should really keep practicing at drums.
Well, it seems like you're doing okay, but no, I think that's the way. You just get out there and start doing it. When I was young, there was a lot of fear, a lot of hesitation, a lot of things holding me back. But if you guys have instruments and within a month or two, you're already recording demos and out there playing shows, that's amazing. That's the way to do it.
Yeah, I think we're lucky to see bands that inspired you in that sense. Like when you show up and a band is selling a cassette with a photocopied cover, and then you look at it and you go, wait, they just recorded at a studio in the next town over. You're like, oh, okay, hold on. There's no barrier for entry here. This is something that doesn't take much to do. You don't have to rely on somebody else necessarily to allow you to do this. So I think we're lucky to be brought into those environments where you're constantly inspired to just be able to do something. And yeah, to your point, there is kind of a natural hesitancy of like, who am I? Why am I able to do this? How am I doing this? And I think I was young enough to where those thoughts just weren't existing yet, because it was more about like, who am I identity wise, and how do I become something that I'm proud of? And then that's like, all right, let's get in the studio. And then that way I can show people I can make music, and then let's go play a show. So that way I can show people I can perform. And so, yeah, like there was never that. And if anything, I wish I still had that naive mindset, because now at this point, I'm like, there is more hesitation or there is more thought. There's almost too much experience of all the failures that have ever happened in life to just allow you to be so naive. But I actually think I've rounded that corner to be able to be like, you know what, just do stuff like you used to, because there's no harm, no foul, and there's more opportunity to come from pushing something over the finish line than there is from letting it sit on a shelf.
Exactly. That's my philosophy. Just keep doing things. Just keep trying things. What else is there to do?
For real. What else is there to do?
So you were into hardcore. Was that your thing for a while? Because we know you were in Fastbreak. We know you were in My Eyes. Was that like the main music you were listening to for a while? Yeah,
I definitely went very deep into it. It was straight edge, posy, hardcore for a while. I mean, I listened to other stuff, but the shows I was going to, the type of music I was playing, it was all in. Even the bands I was in before Fastbreak and In My Eyes were Connecticut hardcore bands, and then Fastbreak and In My Eyes kind of existed in parallel all the way until probably within the year before I joined Piebald. So actually, that was kind of my first foray into being like, oh wow, I'm in a band that's not really a hardcore band anymore. How do I play slower? But yeah, that was definitely the thing that I was into, and every show that I went to, I was either playing or it was a hardcore show for sure.
When you were coming up, what bands were you seeing? Who was inspiring you? Who was around?
Yeah, so Connecticut has that interesting location where not many bands came through there. And there was always these legends of clubs that existed before. So yeah, like thinking about like the bands that I miss. And then the hardcore scene that existed when I first started going was like the Victory Records stuff. The Revelation bands that I loved, most of them had broken up, like, Grill Biscuits, Youth of Today, Judge, Chain of Strength. Those weren't bands when I first started going to shows. I'd missed them probably by a year or two. And so I remember like the first show where I was like, wow, what is going on here was like early Victory tour with Earth Crisis, Snapcase, and Strife. And being straight edge, I'm like, that was like the mecca of a show to be at. And in hindsight, it seemed like a big show when I was at it. It was at Studio 158 in Connecticut, which there's not even a stage or anything. In hindsight, there's probably 200 people there. But at that time, I'm like, this is a huge show. So yeah, it was bands like that. It was the slower kind of chugga hardcore bands that were burgeoning in the early to mid 90s. And then that's when I started hearing more stuff that I was like, oh, I missed the boat on that. Like hearing Grill Biscuits for the first time. I remember just being like, oh my God, this is so different from what I'm seeing now. This is blowing my mind. And that I think kind of led me to want to play more music like that. And then at the time in Connecticut, like Cornerstone was like the band that was still playing fast music like that. And then I remember getting the Fastbreak demo at the time and being like, oh wow, like look, there's more bands like Wide Awake or these other Connecticut bands that came before us. But yeah, it was a lot of that. And then I saw a million bands that I don't even think were hardcore bands. There's a lot of like ska bands in Connecticut and stuff like that. I feel like every bill was like very mixed. There'd be like one kind of hardcore band, one ska band, and then one band where you're like, I don't know what you are, but it's alternative music and we all fit on the same bill together. So cool. But yeah, there wasn't really like the main clubs like you have in other cities. At that time in Connecticut, it was Studio 158 and then the Bristol Skate Park. And, Hatebreed was good for a show every month at the Bristol Skate Park.
Of course. Connecticut legends.
Absolutely.
So Fastbreak, did you say you heard the demo? Were they already together before you joined?
Yeah. So Fastbreak had done a demo and maybe had recorded Don't Stop Trying, which was the first 7-inch they put out. And so I was in this band called Tenfold. Tenfold was on Bridge 9. Bridge 9 1 and 2 are both, one's a split with us in Some Love Affairs and the other's like a Tenfold EP. So Chris Wren was a high school buddy of ours. And so we kind of worked with him to help him start Bridge 9 with some of those early releases. So Fastbreak had a demo at the time. We were actually driving to see them play at the Bristol Skate Park. And this must have been 94, 95, probably 95. And somebody had told me, one of my buddies, Jeff, who was driving, he said, their drummer's not showing up. He's playing hockey. He's a hockey player. And Pat, the singer, was going to play drums, and they might only play 5 songs or something like that. And I think Steve was going to sing. And we're like 30 minutes away from the venue, and I'm like, put on the cassette, put it on over and over, keep playing it. And so everyone, we just sat there and listened to it, and I was like, all right, I think I have at least 2 of these songs. And so we showed up, and I'm like, guys, I'll play these 2 songs. I know one was Behind, and I forgot what the other song was. And they're like, you serious? And I'm like, yeah, just trust me. I'm like, you really want to play drums? I'm like, let me do it. And so I played a few songs with them, and then at that point, I was in Fastbreak. I don't even remember like if they had to like kick out their drummer or whatever it was, but from then on out, I was in the band. And so the Don't Stop Trying 7-inch came out, I think, shortly after that. And then the first thing that we did was, I think it was either the Where It Lies 7-inch or the split with 10 Yard Fight. I don't quite remember, but all this stuff happened so fast. I actually have both these here for us.
Yeah, it looks like Where It Lies 96, and then 10 Yard Fight Fastbreak in 97.
Yeah, so this must have been the first thing we did was the Where It Lies, and then pretty quickly moved up to Boston and met Rama from Big Wheel and all the 10 Yard Fight guys, and that led to that.
Wow, I'm amazed by musicians who can do that, who can just listen to the songs on the way to the gig and then play them like that. It's amazing.
We might have been really stupid about it. Like, I don't know. I might have been awful for all I know. I think I was good, and they wanted me to join the band, so that must have been a good sign. But a good example of like, I don't know that I would do that today. There's like today, there's like too much stakes riding, and like I'd upset someone, and then I wouldn't be able to sleep for 2 nights. Whereas I think back then it was just like the thrill of the audacity, just being like, I'm gonna do it, and like listening to the songs over and over, drumming on my legs in the car. Like I was exhilarated to do it. So yeah, like a strange move that probably comes from just naive audacity.
So you're in the band now. How did you end up hooking up with Rama from Big Wheel?
Friends of friends. So I think we had always known of Big Wheel from the other records that they started putting out at the time, and we didn't really have a home necessarily. Like if I look back at a lot of these records, it was all kind of popping up on labels that probably existed for a very short time period. This is funny enough, Where It Lies was put out by Jesse Stanhard on Stanhard Records from Glastonbury, Connecticut. So Jesse was a buddy of ours. Jesse was in Ripe Brigade and some other bands. He's a staple of the Boston scene. So it almost was like we didn't have a home, and Rama was like a little older than us, and had this thing going on, and like had a record label with several releases, and so him just being like, guys, let me put out your record was awesome, because at the same time, for anyone that's listened to Fastbreak, you could kind of tell we were trying to get out of just being this posy hardcore band. We were trying to show that we weren't just another one of these bands. And so I think that was attractive for us to look at a label like Big Wheel that had these quote unquote indie rock records on it. And we're like, they don't really put out hardcore stuff like this, although they did work on the 10-year fight stuff. So I'm like, it would be cool to be in this scene that allows us to be who we are. And I think Rama recognized that. I think if we were just your run-of-the-mill hardcore band, he may not have been as interested too. But since he saw that we were trying to do something different, that probably excited him. And yeah, the Fast Cars, Fast Women full length was the first full length we did, and that was a lot of fun to record, and we probably did it over 5 days. To have that come out and to kind of show people like this is what Fastbreak sounds like now. You're starting to hear some like rock and roll guitar licks over fast emotional hardcore music, and to me, honestly, when I still listen to that record, I'm like, it's cool to know that a bunch of teenagers did this and didn't overthink it. And I'm like, I still love these songs. We actually got to play some of them last year, which is exciting too. So it's exciting to have that now exist again for people that have never heard it.
What was going on with you and the band that you wanted to break out of just being the posy hardcore band? Had your tastes been evolving? Did you just want to try something else?
Yeah, I think there was a desire to be inspired by what came before us, but not copy it. And it was almost too easy to just be like, we can just sound like a fast hardcore band. And we were into other types of music, like Steve Peak, our guitar player, definitely like, him and his brother, who's an amazing guitar player as well. They play a lot of rock and roll stuff. So Steve would always show up and play some Cars songs or whatever. And we were really into like the Descendants and stuff like that. So we liked melodic punk type stuff. In fact, a lot of the stuff we were listening to was more on like Fat Records than necessarily the hardcore labels of the time. So we were just kind of inspired by that, and kind of had the audacity to try and do that. And I think bands like Civ existing felt like we had a little bit more license to do that, because you listen to their records and you see them up on stage and they have like slick back hair and button down shirts and whatnot, and you're like, oh wow, okay, hardcore can evolve. And I think we just wanted to be different, but at the same time be ourselves. And I think Fast Cars, Fast Women was like a nice balance of, it's undoubtedly a hardcore record, but you listen to it and you're going to hear some guitar licks or maybe melody driven lyrics that at the time wasn't really happening for a band that was like as intensely fast as we were.
Yeah, it wasn't so much of a thing back then. Lifetime is the biggest example I can think of. I got into this music in '98, and you were just indoctrinated with Lifetime. You were handed those records, and it was like, these are great, and they are.
Yeah, I'm glad you bring them up because that should have been the first band I mentioned. We loved Lifetime. They were like gods to us because the music was so authentic and so relatable and so moving, and then they could just shred their instruments. So seeing them play, you were like, wow, like these guys are killing it. And then they didn't sound like anything that was specifically happening at the time. You could draw some parallels between them and bands that came before them, but they had their own sound, and there was no one else really playing at the time that felt like them. And they were like a big inspiration to us because you could tell they didn't give a crap about what people thought of their sound or whether they were considered part of the hardcore scene or not. That was never on their radar. They're going to do their own thing no matter what. And I think for a band like us that maybe felt like this was kind of a thing, like you kind of feel like the scene can own you at times. Like the scene has some sort of unwritten rules and you got to abide by those. And I think we kind of hit a point where we're like, let's start to put some cracks in that kind of mentality and let's be ourselves. So even we started wearing button-down shirts or nice collared shirts that we bought, from a thrift store or whatnot. So we started to adopt that look as well and kind of show that we're not just your run-of-the-mill hardcore band.
Yeah, I don't think Fastbreak ever has been because I remember getting Whenever You're Ready in 1999, an album out on Revelation Records. That's got to be exciting, right? And that was a very melodic sound. And that was there it is right there. See, for our YouTube listeners, you can see things that are happening now too. And I love that record. I remember you playing with Saves the Day at one point. There was a big melodic / pop punk / hardcore thing starting to bubble up.
Yeah, we did a lot of shows with Saves the Day, and we did the longest tour we've ever done was us and Saves the Day. We did 6 weeks around the US and Canada. 2 of the weeks had Far Side on them. And it was such an interesting mix, right? Like Far Side to us were like they were like an older generation, even though we're not that far away in age. But to us, we're like Far Side's a band that's been around for a while, and they have so many records and all this stuff. And then Saves the Day was like a little bit of a younger band who was fastly rising, and Far Side had just put out a new record on Revelation, and I think that was like they had broken up, and that was their like kind of comeback record. Through Being Cool for Saves the Day wasn't out yet, but it came out on that tour, and to watch the before and after of that in real time was amazing. And yeah, we had just put out Whenever You're Ready, so it's like kind of like everyone had their new shiny object to get out there and promote, and it was such a weird mix because I guess in hindsight, like Saves the Day was a fast band then, and Fastbreak was a fast band, so we kind of mixed. But you could kind of tell, like a specific Saves the Day fan had no like some of the newer fans that they were attracting didn't know the history of Revelation Records or whatever to know like what a hardcore band was. I'm like, no, they just love catchy, poppy, fast music, and this new Saves the Day record is crushing it. So we kind of felt like, I'm like, whoa, we're like the hardcore band on this bill, and Saves the Day is like this like pop band that's blowing up, and then Far Side is like our elderly statesman that's showing us how to play some of this music. So it was such an interesting mix. Definitely like a coming of age tour for Saves the Day in that sense. I have a lot of fond memories of hanging out with those guys, and it's funny to think about because in reality we were like maybe 2 years older than them, but 2 years when you're like 17-year-olds versus 19 or 20-year-olds is like a world of difference. So I just remember kind of being like, we're kind of like their older brothers here, and we get to mess with them a little bit here and there. But it was such a fun tour, and I guess interestingly, like right after that, Saves the Day went on tour with Piebald. It was Saves the Day, Piebald, and Newfound Glory, and I remember seeing that tour because that was before I was in Piebald, and kind of seeing like, wow, they they literally got even more massive within a month.
You just jogged my memory. I was at that tour. That's so weird.
That was, I mean, think about those bills. Like, that was insane to think about because Newfound Glory was opening up.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I don't remember where Saves the Day and Piebald were. They might have been switching off based on the market, but they were kind of like at equal billing, and Newfound Glory was the new band that was opening up for it.
Right. So did Fastbreak tour a lot between Fast Cars, Fast Women, and Whenever You're Ready? Did you guys tour all over the country and everything?
We toured a modest amount. I'd say we toured as much as a hardcore band of that era toured. So for Fast Cars, Fast Women, we did several weekend tours. We did an East Coast tour probably right before it came out. And then we eventually did two US tours, one with Saves the Day and one with 10 Yard Fight. So those were, and I think the 10 Yard Fight one was actually before the Saves the Day one. So those are like extensive tours for us. So I guess one of those you could say the 10 Yard Fight tour was for Fast Cars, Fast Women. The Saves the Day tour was for Whenever You're Ready. So a tour per record. And then we went to Europe once between the two records. So that was our one European tour. But it seems like we would always do weekend shows in the Eastern Corridor, like every weekend when I was in college. And a lot of this gets blurred between In My Eyes and Fastbreak, but it was going down to New Jersey or Virginia Beach or Philadelphia or New York, or occasionally going up to either Burlington or Portland, Maine, and then obviously playing Connecticut and Boston as much as we could. But yeah, I wouldn't say we did a ton, but for what we could afford and for what it felt like the life cycle of a hardcore band was, I think we did our part.
For sure.
Yeah.
Fastbreak goes until about 99. What happened? Why did it end?
We got into our own heads. Putting out Whenever You're Ready was a further step in our progress, and we didn't really give it the full kind of push that it needed. But you start to see at shows people aren't as into it, and we're kind of like, oh man, like we're getting close to graduating college and all that stuff. And it's really funny to look back in hindsight at some of the thoughts you have when you're in your late teens and early 20s, because I was like, I'm turning 20 and I'm gonna be even older soon, and I can't be playing this hardcore music that I was playing as a kid. Like I need to go on to the next chapter of my life. So I think it was naturally like we lost a little of our momentum per se, and then everyone was going off to do different things, and I think we felt like rather than beat a dead horse, let's go out on a high note, and it felt like we had done what any hardcore band was going to do during that time. Like all the bands we loved, none of them put out more than one full length, maybe two full lengths if you really got into it. But like Gorilla Biscuits, Judge, like those bands that we loved, it's like they had an EP and an awesome full length, and maybe they started to put out more stuff, but there was no world, like the only bands that had a lot of records were like Sick of It All and stuff like that. And even them, I'm like, you're so far past this scene that's happening with all these hardcore bands that like I can't even equate us to you because you're like these older New York guys. It wasn't a thing that a hardcore band was going to keep putting out records and keep being a band. It wasn't written down in the history that I thought we needed to live. Now in hindsight, Fastbreak could have went on and been, up with any of these other bands that broke out of the hardcore or post-punk or emo rock worlds. Like we could have been any of those bands. We had the sound, we had the look, but that was not our fate for us. So it was kind of just, it felt like we had run its course. At that point in your life, 4 years, if not close to 5 years of something was 20 to 25% of your life. And that's, and if you really put that in perspective, that was half of your teenage life. So it already felt like we had done so much that to keep going when there was so many other options just wasn't necessarily in our cards.
And while that's all going on, you're in My Eyes as well.
Yeah. So I moved to Boston in 1996 to go to Northeastern University. Neil, who grew up with me in Fastbreak, he grew up in Glastonbury, but he was in Fastbreak with me. He also went to Boston University the same year, and the rest of the guys in Fastbreak were still in high school. So he and I were ahead. So he and I were up in Boston, and we had known Rama at that point, and we knew Anthony Pappalardo from 10 Yard Fight, and we knew Sweet Pete because everybody knew Sweet Pete. And it just really kind of organically happened. We're like, hey, let's start jamming. I think Anthony had left 10 Yard Fight, and he was still writing a bunch of songs. And so we got together in the house that Pete and Anthony were living in on Mission Hill, and started jamming. And with after our first practice, we had a few songs. After our next practice, we had enough to do an EP, and we really quickly got that going. So it's kind of like everyone in Fastbreak was back in Connecticut, and we only had the ability to get together on certain weekends to play shows. And we had this existence in Boston, and so we took advantage of that opportunity and started a new band. And it was like, I'm sure there are points where the two bands interfered, but it never really seemed like it. We were never really like turning down big tours or doing anything. It was always just weekend warrior stuff. And then to do tours, we just planned it. We'd say, we're going to go on tour. And then the other bands, we're going to go on tour. So it just kind of naturally happened. And the two were able to exist together for the entire duration. And even we're on the same bills together at various points. So it never really felt like I had a separate existence. It was always just like, yep, we're doing as many things as we can. And these are the two things that I'm doing now.
The cover for The Difference Between is like one of the most memorable record covers in my mind. Do you know the context behind it? Right there, that's it. I never forgot that record cover. Who is that? Who made the cover? What's the context behind it? Do you know any of this information that you can tell me?
Absolutely. So the artist is Pushead. So Pushead,
yeah.
He did Metallica records. I think he did a Misfits record. He's done a lot of stuff in the punk world. Yeah, legendary. Somehow Anthony and him became buddies. Like they were communicating with each other, because Anthony is an artist, and at some point they started talking, and sent Pushead our demo cassette that had come out at the time, and he was into the band, and we asked him to do artwork, and somehow it fit within our Revelation Records budget. So to do this, we all took photos of our faces and sent them to him. So every member of the band took a photo of their face and sent it to him. This is Damian Gennardi. So Damian was our bass player. Damian was in the Explosion as well for a while. Great guy. And he was actually the most handsome member of the band. You cannot tell by this photo. But that was like, when I look at it, I'm like, that is Damian. I see Damian 100% right there. But it was Pushead style, which is like the tiny like whatever you call it, the dot thing. And he made this, and if you look at a lot of his other artwork, it looks just like it. And I think we're really lucky to have an artist that had worked on major label like records like that be interested in doing something with us. And then he actually included us on a compilation that he had done. And I remember Jawbox was on that, and I remember being like, this is so cool. We're this straight edge hardcore band, and we're on this like compilation with other bands that aren't in our scene. And it felt like an honor to have him do the artwork.
That's amazing. I would have never guessed it was him.
Yeah. I mean, I know I've looked him up recently, and he's definitely done other, he does a lot of album covers, but I think for us to be, again, like a straight edge hardcore band where you're used to the album cover being like a live photo of someone screaming with a bunch of people finger pointing or somebody doing a guitar jump like that, to have that come out as an album cover was, I think, a band like In My Eyes, that was our way of being like, we're not going to just be a run-of-the-mill hardcore band. We're going to try to do our own thing and have stuff that looks unique to us as well.
It worked because I always remember that one. We, like you said, we have the album covers with everyone singing along or a guitar player jumping in the air, but that record, it's just that cover is one of a kind.
Yeah, it truly is.
Was that the thought in My Eyes as well, musically at all, or with any other aesthetics of the band, to just try to be different from other stuff that was going on?
Yeah, In My Eyes, I think for that time, it was just wanting to be playing what we felt was blistering fast hardcore music with its own twist. So bringing in some melody and whatnot, but I think the melody in my eyes is mostly in the music. Sweet Pete is your quintessential straight edge hardcore singer. Like, he's going to give it all and deliver it to you as it is, and not mess around with melodies or anything like that. That a band like Fastbreak and a lot of other bands got into. So yeah, I think it was just about trying to write music that we felt was smart, but also was going to move people and be a good snapshot of that point in time, because that was like, I'm sure there's been a million hardcore revivals, but being part of that one felt like the first one after your kind of foundational straight edge hardcore bands that existed, all the way from like maybe Discord stuff to the Revelation stuff. The Revelation stuff kind of ended a chapter, and then Connecticut bands like Cornerstone and even Fast Break. But then like I remember hearing 10-Yard Fight and someone getting us the demo and just being like, it almost was like, whoa, this is happening in other places too. And that's like the naive Connecticut mindset of like, I'm only hearing the stuff that I'm able to see here. And then, hearing a band like 10-Yard Fight, I remember that gave hope and inspiration, because I'm like, these are older guys who actually went to a lot of these shows that I didn't get to go to because I wasn't old enough yet. And they're around and they're still playing, they're doing their thing. So even for Fastbreak to be able to be like, we're going to do a split with 10-Yard Fight was such an exciting thing. And then, starting In My Eyes and whatnot too, there was a lot more bands popping up. You had bands in Philly and New Jersey coming up, but it wasn't like crazy oversaturated or anything. There were not a ton of bands playing music like that. So for us, I'm like, this is us trying to, put our flag in the sand as like, this is what we want this revival to sound like.
Yeah, at that time, I remember I was listening, when I came into this thing, I was listening to all the crazy crossover metal stuff that was happening, Converge, Cave In, Coalesce, Dillinger, Escape Plan. That was the thing I was going on. So I remember seeing In My Eyes one time, though, in Philly. It was either at the Truck or the TLA. And even with very little experience in the scene, I could tell that In My Eyes was kind of a standout, like a more traditional sound. And I always have this image of, there was these guys in varsity jackets and they were just going nuts and like climbing over the crowd. And I always have that image in my head when I think of In My Eyes. So even then, not knowing the music incredibly well, I could kind of see that it was like not the most common thing happening at the time. And now when I look back, yeah, there was, I guess there was a hunger for those bands, those traditional sounding bands.
Yeah, it's almost like every market had to like have delegates that were going to do it. It's like, you had like Floor Punch down in New Jersey and like, Rain on the Parade in Philadelphia and stuff. It's like everyone had to, like every scene had to have one. And then obviously a lot more kept coming out after that. But at the time, yeah, it didn't feel like an oversaturated thing that was happening. And those shows are like big in hindsight too. Some of the Boston shows were drawing 600 plus people, and they're probably like $5 tickets. And I think we were all lucky to get paid a few $100 or whatever. But it wasn't until later that I realized, I'm like, oh, we kind of took it for granted that hundreds of kids were going to come out to any show. And there's even like, there's Piebald shows now where I'm like, I hope we can get that many people. So like to have a scene that was just so I don't know, there was a lot of support happening there, and that it was the same no matter where you went, whether it was Boston or New York or Philadelphia or anywhere in New Jersey. It seemed like every town in New Jersey had its own scene.
Yeah. It was a great time. There was great things happening in every subgenre. There was all different types of bands like you're talking about. There would always be a ska band. There would always be a cool math rock or alt type band. Mm-hmm. There would always be a cool emo band. There would always be a cool metallic hardcore band, and the shows would have 300, 400, 500 people.
Yep. And it almost didn't matter where you played on the bill. There was no like, oh man, I can't believe we have to open or we have to headline or whatever it was. It didn't matter. You could be anywhere on the bill. People were going to be there. People were going to be excited. And it was like the true like all ages shows where people were there to really, really see the music, and they didn't want to miss it. Whereas like, yeah, I could go to some shows now and I'm like, I can tell some people are just going to pop in for one thing and then leave because they're here for a specific purpose. That was a place to go hang out. That was the scene. That was what to do. And like you almost like, I mean, before FOMO was a term, when there was a show and you didn't go, you didn't see a video of it. No one made videos of the shows. Like you just missed it. That was it. You didn't get any satisfaction out of it. You just felt like you missed out on an opportunity in life. And so going to every show, like getting the printed flyer and looking at every show and circling the ones that you're going to go to. It's like, that was life. You had to go to those things or else you weren't going to be able to be a part of it.
Right. It was the best. In My Eyes ended not too long after Fastbreak, right?
Yeah, to me it was like the same exact time, but I know there's probably months between. And in fact, I still need to like have some sort of like definitive knowledge of it. But I believe Fastbreak broke up first, and then I'm pretty sure In My Eyes broke up on the second Edge Day, if that makes sense. So Edge Day 10/17 was first launched because of 10-Yard Fights last show. I want to say In My Eyes broke up on the second Edge Day. I could be totally wrong about that, but that's what I remember. So it would have been 10/17 2000. No, that doesn't make sense. No, does it? 10/17? No, I don't know.
The internet says 2000, so you might be right there.
Yeah, and I know we at least played one of the Edge Days.
What happened? Ready to move on to other things?
Yeah. So first evolution was Neil left In My Eyes. He stopped being of the Edge and decided to leave In My Eyes. So that was kind of the first thing for me where I'm like, oh, Neil was like my childhood best friend, and the rest of the guys are my good friends too, and I got along with them great and everything. But I remember just being like, my buddy's gone, but at least we're still in Fastbreak together. That's cool. And we got Jeff Newman, who's awesome. Jeff was in Better Than 1,000 and is like was a DC icon to me. So it was awesome to like be in a group of those guys. But I just remember kind of getting to a point where I'm like, what else are we going to do? What we put out 2 full lengths, which, going by the earlier math that I expressed, that's twice as much as a hardcore band did do then. So like putting out a second full length, and I loved the second record that we did. I thought that record was as awesome, if not better, than The Difference Between. Yeah, I think some of those things just ran their course. Like I was still straight edge at the time. I had not thought about not being straight edge, but a lot of people weren't. I don't think that had anything to do with it, but it was, everything was culminating. I was getting ready. I was getting closer to graduating college and whatnot, and so was everyone else. And people were joining other bands. At some point during this, Damien has started The Explosion with his buddies. So you could kind of see everything kind of pulling in different directions.
When and how did you get word about joining Piebald?
Yes, this is a good story. Actually, there's not much of a story to it. So, Rama reached out to me at some point, and I had been living with Rama, but I don't think we were living together at this point. And he's like, "Hey, Piebald's gonna need a drummer. Their drummer John had a full-time job and had gotten married, and he wasn't gonna be touring full-time. He just couldn't tour, and so he's like, they're writing a record right now. Big Wheel's going to put out this new record. They're doing it with Paul Coldry. It's going to be awesome, and you should be their drummer." It was like, I'd love to use the term like you should try out, but I don't even think he said that. And he's like, you should jam with him. You should play with him. So me and Travis went to what was called the Initech office. Initech was a play on the Office Space, but it was basically it was Big Wheel, Bridge 9. Matt Galley had his booking agency in there. Jen Malone had her PR company in there. So it was like this conglomerate of musicians. It was actually right next to Fenway Park too. It was like, had this awesome location, but they called it Initech because it was like a conglomerate. And I remember I loaded my drums in there, and Travis bought his amp and whatnot, and we just jammed on the songs. And Travis is like a super humble, person. Like Travis is not the person that's going to be like, by the way, you sucked at all those songs or whatever. And I remember him just being like, that was cool. And I was like, I hope that was cool, because I'm like, I just learned the songs, and your songs are not the easiest songs to learn. Like, there's a lot of weird stuff going on. So for me, I'm like, I was desperately trying to remember the parts, but also perform the parts. But it was almost like, and this could just be a testament of like the scene at the time. Like, we were all good friends. Like, Aaron Stewart was one of my good buddies. Like, him and I hung out a lot. And I knew the rest of the guys in Piebald well. And Ram and I were close. That it was almost like they're like, as long as Luke doesn't totally mess us up and whatnot, like, he's going to be the drummer. So I jammed to Travis, and then, I remember going into the studio with them when they were doing the We Are the Only Friends We Have album. So being there and like hearing it being recorded, and I have fond memories of like feeling like I was part of that record, even though I didn't play on it. We even did like a photo shoot in there, and I'm in some of the photos because they knew I was going to start touring with them. And then as soon as they were done doing that record, like, no joke, in the parking lot of the studio, we loaded up the equipment and left for our first tour. So the last day of tracking, like, literally we left to go be a band on tour, and we've never looked back since then. So it felt right. Like, it felt, my other bands had wound down during that year. Somewhere somebody's looking after me, because I graduated college September of 2001, and we left for tour 2 months later. And I remember being like, the hell am I going to do with my life if I'm not in a band? I got a degree in human services, which is social work and psychology. And sure, I could have went and been a social worker, but that's definitely not what I would have done. I would have kept trying to play drums. And so for this opportunity to present itself, and the timing couldn't have been more perfect. Like, I never got a job, and Piebald became my job, and I had the best job ever. And I still have it. So yeah, that's how we got there.
That's amazing. Who did they have, a studio drummer or something for We Are the Only Friends?
It was John. So John Sullivan was their drummer on the majority of the records. All the way through to there. The only record he didn't play on before then was the Rock Revolution EP. Alcor, Alex Garcia Rivera, who's like a Boston hardcore staple, was in the band during that time, and so he recorded on that EP. So actually, the tour you saw, Newfound Glory, Saves the Day, Piebald, would have been Alex on drums. And then Piebald had broken up for I'll say a year or so, and then started writing this record again. Travis had done Totally Travis between then, which was his solo project. And actually some material, I know the Stalker that was on We Are the Only Friends We Have was a Totally Travis song. So I think he never stopped writing. And then it was just, Piebald's going to get back together and write this record. And then they had John do it, because John had been their drummer the longest. But he was like, I'm not going to tour with you guys. And so it was not a studio drummer. It was their drummer that they had the longest at the time.
Okay. How was it for you? A departure from Fastbreak and In My Eyes, like you mentioned before, right? It's a full-on, very catchy rock band.
Yeah, it was fun, but I definitely have had to like retrain myself on playing drums, because when you're playing blast beats, your foot's on the gas, right? You are going as fast as you can. You're pushing the limits. And then all of a sudden be playing more slowed down stuff. I'm like, okay, relax, dude, relax. And so I definitely know, like, probably even still to this day, I speed up every song we play. It's just in my heart. And when you're performing in front of people, like, it's kind of natural to take songs that have intensity and make them more intense, because you're like, you're all here to see these songs. Don't you want to hear them be even more intense? So naturally that bumps it up a few BPMs. But it wasn't a crazy adjustment. I think the toughest thing was just Piebald notoriously has some math involved. So the internal head counting of like going from one time signature to another, and making sure that I nailed those was the biggest thing. Like, and I'll say the same thing when I first joined Fastbreak. For a while, it feels like you're in a cover band. You're playing somebody else's drum parts, and you're playing these songs that you once knew. Because I saw Piebald a lot of times. We played with Piebald. Fastbreak played with Piebald. In My Eyes played with Piebald several times. So I knew them. I knew a lot of their songs, and I've gone from being someone and singing along to being like, man, now I got to play these. Cool. So you're adopting somebody else's drum parts, and every drummer has a style, and John had a very specific style. So trying to be like, let me keep the integrity of the songs and let me play them so that nobody recognizes it as anything different. But let me also try to make these more in my wheelhouse and a little bit more comfortable to me. So if you see us play a Pilot song, even if it was when I first joined versus now, I'm playing it not exactly like it is on the record. I've definitely adopted it to my own, but it took me a little while to get comfortable to doing that. But yeah, it's there's still songs that I play because there's a lot of songs that we have that were recorded before me. So there's still a lot of songs where I'm like, I still feel like I'm in a cover band right now playing this song because I didn't write this and this is not my exact style, but I try to pull it off as best as I can.
And you do. Yeah, but that's just how it goes when you join a band that already has songs, right? You learn what's given to you, and then you put your own touch on it, and then hopefully you write new songs with the band.
Yeah. And I'd have to do the math, but I think even now, and we have a new Piebald record that we're working on, which we could talk about. But
yes,
even now, there still might be more stuff that's not me than there is with me. And I'm going on my 24th year in the band.
Wow.
And I think that just says a lot about how active I think bands were kind of during that time period. Because even Fastbreak, we have a split, two 7-inches, a split, and two full lengths. And In My Eyes had a demo 7-inch and two full lengths. That all happened in 4 years. So somehow in 4 years, I did 4 full lengths and a whole bunch of EPs. And then now I've done 2 Piebald full lengths that have come out, a Christmas EP, which I think we can barely count as an EP. And then later this year, we should hopefully have our next one. So even if you do the math, I'm like, I still think there's more Piebald without me 24 years later than there will be with me.
We've got to change that. Now, when I had Travis on the show, I think that was 3 or 4 years ago, there was still no new music happening. I think Travis said we were still unsure of if we wanted to write new music, and it sounds like that's not the case anymore, and that's very exciting to me. What can you tell us?
I'll let all the cats out of the bag as long as iodine doesn't kill me, but we have been working on new music for a long time. And so Travis, knowing Travis, he might have been very humble and maybe didn't want to spill anything. Some of the tracks that we are working on now, we started in 2017. And because we're all in different places around the country, we can't just get together for 2 months and go record a record. So we've been going into our buddy's studio in North Reading. This guy, Doug, he has a studio called The Den. We actually did our last full length there, Accidental Gentleman, in 2006 or 7, whenever that one was. And he's just been a friend of ours, and we have just gone in there. So we'll go usually from anywhere from 2 or 3 days to maybe 4 or 5 days. And we've been there, I don't know, 10 to 12 times now over the past 7 years. And it was finally when Iodine's been talking to us for a while, but finally we're like, okay, let's talk about re-releasing all of our old records. And we have new music too. So the deal that we signed with them was to re-release 3 of our old records and to do a new record. And so we actually went back and looked at a lot of this stuff that we had recorded and kind of realized a lot of this is really good. There's something about when you first go in with a song that you just wrote and you re-recorded, that kind of magic, passion and intensity of when you're like, this song's even new to us and we're just going to go rip it. And some of the songs we even went back after we thought we had, thought of the perfect way to do them and re-recorded them and then listened to the newer version versus the older one, we're like, we're going to go with the older one. It's just, you can't match that intensity that we had. And so we rounded a corner maybe halfway through last year where we're like, you know what? We have the majority of the record done. And this is like kind of while we were signing with Iodine, we're like, we already have half this record done. Let's go back in, another time. And so we went back in kind of in the summer, and then we got more done. And then we're like, I think we just need to go back one more time. And we went back in December and we finished up all the tracking. So we've tracked 14 songs that moved over the finish line. 12 we think are going to be on the record, and we have 2 kind of B-sides, but they're all fully tracked. We are now going through the mixing process of selecting who's going to work on the mixing and the artwork process, which first we have to name the record. And we have a lot of names and a few people that we're talking about with mixing. So the goal, if timing goes perfect, and we know timing doesn't go perfect, would be that it comes out sometime between July and early fall of this year. And we're super proud of it. It's tough to listen to the entire body of Piebald work if you go all the way back to like Sometimes Friends Fight, or When Life Hands You Lemons, through to Venetian Blinds and We Are the Only Friends We Have. Then the 2 records that we did after that, which is All Ears, All Eyes, All the Time, and Accidental Gentleman. I'm like, these all you could say all these sound different. And there's an underlying, like, you hear Travis's voice, you hear the song structure and whatnot, you're like, it's all Piebald, but it's always Piebald just being Piebald in a different way every time. And so when I hear these new songs, I'm like, well, first of all, it's all bangers. The 12 songs that are going to be on the record are each one in and of itself, I'm like, banger, this song freaking rips. And then listening to the work as a whole, I'm like, I don't know what this sounds like, but I know it sounds like us, and we've gotten really positive feedback from everyone that heard it. They're like, this sounds just like Piebald, but it sounds like this new thing you guys did. And so I'm like, all right, that sounds cool. So it's really exciting for us because I think we had been spinning our wheels for too long. Starting in 2017, demos. Like, the guy we were recording with, Doug, hated the word demo. He's like, these are professional recordings. Why are you calling them demos? And I'm like, just because it's a safe word to use. All right. So then finally going into this last session in December, we were like, we know we're finishing it up. And to now be at this point where we have the songs and now we're just getting to work on the next phase. I'm like, this is so awesome. We did it. So super excited for it to become a reality for everyone else to hear too.
That is very exciting. You're telling me we could have a new Piebald record this year if all the timing works out.
Yeah. If we can just get out of our own way in terms of naming the record, then I think we should be good, because we need to do the artwork, and the name is kind of going to influence the artwork. So it's just a matter of, but even now, like, literally 2 minutes before this call, we're texting different options around. So we're active with it. We're doing it. All right.
It's going to hit. It's going to come in a eureka moment, and we're going to decide on it. It always does.
Yeah, for sure. And we have played some of the songs live. When we did the Best Friends Forever Festival, we played one or two tracks. I think one song, and then we did 2 holiday shows and we played 2 new songs. So some people have heard some of it live. And yeah, so there's a lot more coming.
How much cowbell on the record? Do we have Dana in there?
So for all the fans out there that love Dana, and I know there's a lot of fans that love Dana, because if you go on Instagram after any of our shows, half the content is Dana. We brought him in specifically because we identified a song that had a specific part that needed cowbell. And I'm happy to report Dana does appear on the record playing cowbell in one of the songs.
Perfect. I can't wait to hear it. Let's go down the list. Fastbreak, we have the Fast Cars, Fast Women repress, which is out March 28th on Iodine Recordings, and we want everyone to pick that up, right? Remastered, new artwork, retrospectives.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I only have the old one to show, but it looks kind of like this, just new.
Yeah.
That is super exciting for a lot of reasons. So the singer of Fastbreak, Pat, who has been out of our lives for a while. He moved to Israel over 20 years ago, I'd say at this point, and we hadn't stayed in touch that well, I'll say. Um, and naturally, all of us were living our adult lives. But this whole process of working on the record has actually brought us all back together, and so we're all heavily communicating on email, and even Rama. Like Rama, I hadn't heard from him in a while, and seeing him now being part of this and on these email chains and chiming in here and there is really exciting for me too, because it's just, that was such a huge part of our lives, and to have all these people reconnected is awesome. So I know the Fastbreak record came out digitally, and people who ordered it are going to get their vinyl. Fastbreak did, at least 3/5 of Fastbreak did play last year in California. So I don't know if you're one of those people following the small microcosm of activity on the Fastbreak Instagram page, you would have seen that. But Neil's son, so Neil lives in Los Angeles. He's been there for over 2 decades. His son is now 16, maybe going on 17 now at this point. He's totally into hardcore and screamo bands. He's in like 4 or 5 different bands himself. And so randomly Piebald, or not randomly, but Piebald was going to be out there for Best Friends Forever. And we were doing a few Los Angeles shows. And Neil was here actually hanging out with me and Don, who's in Fastbreak. And he was like, all right, so Piebald has a day off. If my son Tate books a show, you guys will play, and we're drinking beers around my fire. So I'm like, yeah, of course. And then literally a week later, he's like, all right, Tate booked a show, and Don, we got to fly you out, and he, like, let's start talking about the songs we're going to learn. So the 3 of us joined Tate, Neil's son on guitar, and then one of the singers of Tate's bands sang. So we played like 3, 4, 5 songs maybe. But I'm like, honestly, just crossing that threshold of us jumping up on stage and playing these songs, and it was to all teenagers who had a great time doing it. I'm like, this is great. And then he's even sent me videos since then of Tate's band covering $120, Fastbreak songs. So like, I'm like, this is cool. We have a new life now. I don't picture that Fastbreak's ever going to be able to play because our singer has religious restrictions. I guess I'll just leave it at that, from being able to do it. So as much as we'd all love to do it, I don't know that we would ever be able to do it with our lineup that we would love to do it with.
How about In My Eyes? Has there ever been any reunions, or is there ever talk of one?
So we did This Is Hardcore in 20 God, I don't even remember. It could have been 2016 or something like that, in Philadelphia, and then we played the Middle East also. And those were cool, but being out of practice with a band like that, and then like all of us have communicated, but we're not in constant communication. It didn't feel as organic as I would have liked it to be. It was a lot of fun to do, and I love playing the songs, but honestly, it was like boot camp to try to like train myself to be able to play the songs. And then I ran into Sweet Pete, our singer. He was actually at a Piebald concert we did with Newfound Glory 2 years ago. It'll be 2 years this summer. And he and I talked for a while, and he's like, yeah, we still get people ask all the time, but he's like, we kind of agreed. It just doesn't really make sense to us. And I know, like, In My Eyes was a straight edge band too. And all of us, except for Sweet Pete, have broken our edge. And I know if you're not edge now, you never were. So I guess I never was. But yeah, I think like some of those aspects of the band just don't seem as genuine. So I think there's less talk of a band like In My Eyes playing again.
Okay. And Piebald, we know we have the new record coming. Any shows coming up or anything we can announce?
Not anything in detail. We did agree to our first festival this year, but you'll have to wait until April for that one to get announced. So our booking agent is Matt Galley. Matt Galley's been with us since the beginning. He is a superstar. We're the first band he ever booked, and then he went on to My Chemical Romance fame. At one point he booked Bruno Mars and Kesha, and now he books like Shawn Mendes and Janet Jackson. So for Piebald to be able to have Matt Galley is like, it's such a wonderful thing for us, and he's one of my best friends, and we've known him forever. So gave him official orders, like start looking for festivals and support stuff. So we'll probably still do our like holiday shows and stuff like that as headliners, but really we're looking to get more festival appearances just to get in front of bigger audiences, but also support. We love, playing with other bands in our genre, and we're fortunate enough that a lot of bands from our genre have gone on to become big bands and they like us. So, right before the pandemic, we had done a 3.5 week tour with Dashboard Confessional. Is one of the best times of our lives. So like a great example of a band that hopefully you'll get to see us with, a band of that size that fits our genre, that's from our same era, like that, probably sometime starting in the fall. But also I said, Gally, look at all of 2026 as well, because we want to do everything we can to support our new record when it comes out.
Awesome. Well, I'm looking forward to hearing that. And Luke, thanks so much for coming on the show. I've been listening to you a long time. I'm looking forward to more. I will find you and say hi to you the next time I see Piebald. I was at the Brooklyn show, whenever that was, last year, 2 years ago, I don't know. But now that I know you, I'm going to find you.
Likewise, Keith. I can't wait to meet you in person. It's going to be awesome. I love everything you do. Keep doing it. You're such a good voice. You're such a great conversationalist, and I've loved listening to your podcast, and I'm happy to be a part of it.
All right, we are here now with Larry Hundertmark. Larry, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Keith.
It's great to have you here, Larry. The Phantom Eye just put out an excellent new EP called Cymatic Waves. I was just checking that out. I really dig it. And I saw your bandmate Pete at our show the other week at TVI, so that was cool. And there's a lot I want to talk to you about, Larry. But first, how are you doing? How's it going today?
I'm good. Always a little stressed. It's always some kind of monkey wrench in the day, but that's how life goes, right?
All the time. What was your monkey wrench of the day?
We released the EP yesterday, so uploading different stuff, trying to figure out why certain things aren't working.
Yeah.
Sorry, I got my little buddy here.
I love it. I'm a big fan of cats.
Yeah, she loves it. She's always walking all over the studio. Most of the time, she sits on my shoulder.
I see you have a lot of equipment there. Do you do a lot of home demoing?
Yeah, we do all a lot of the pre-pro stuff for all the songs we've done. Just a roughs on the E-kit playing along, and we would come here afterwards and lay down some keys, and Pete would lay down some guitars, and we actually track all the vocals here for the last 2 EPs in my room, but everything else was done at a Real Deal Studio G in Brooklyn.
Where is that studio?
I'm not sure the exact address, but it's one of the great ones.
Yeah.
Really nice room.
Where do you live?
I'm in Ridgewood, Queens.
Okay. Yeah, I'm in Williamsburg, Brooklyn. Did you grow up in New York City?
No, I grew up was born in Brooklyn, raised in Long Island. And by the time I was like 14, I was back in Nassau County and then the Brooklyn again and Queens. And
so a lot of New York.
Yeah, migrate back to where you came from normally.
Yeah. And have you always been interested in music growing up?
Yeah, that's always been the main thing, ever since I was in high school, junior high school. Unfortunately, I didn't feel like I really got to any good at my instrument until like the last 20 years, because in the beginning you just want to get on there and do the thing and you don't care so much about technique or anything else, and you're just going through the motions. Then you learn how to master your instrument a little bit better and learn how to practice and what to practice, and you start to get better over time.
Right. And it's always been primarily drums for you?
Yeah, pretty much. I did this rough stint of vocals in this band somewhere in the middle of all this journey. That was called Nassau Chainsaw Disgraceland Demolition Committee. So that was a completely different thing. We had fire breathers, people hanging from hooks, doing suspensions. It was a big visual show.
Yeah.
With some hardcore mixed with hip hop type stuff.
And how about your history with hardcore and punk and all of that? Like, is that something you got into growing up in New York City? Like, what's your thing musically?
Yeah, so I guess coming up in the 90s, I started to get an ear to the scene of the Long Island hardcore scene, the VOD guys. Then I was introduced to Candiria and all those different bands from Long Island and Brooklyn at that time. And I got asked to play in one of the bands. I went to school for audio recording. So right out of high school, I was trying to open up my own studio and record different bands. And over time, I started to meet a lot of different people, and they asked me to play in this band called Neck, who were a bunch of guys from Long Island. And we got together and we wound up getting on Striving for Togetherness Records, which was one of those earlier labels that also had Vision of Disorder on it, a bunch of other Fahrenheit 451, not Hate Brain, Shutdown was on there. So there was a bunch of different bands from the scene, No Redeeming Social Value. So all those type of bands. And then I started recording the next stuff and playing drums on it at the same time. And I had like a week and a half to learn the stuff. So I just was rushing through it. And those guys wound up starting a band called Car Bomb about, I don't know, 14 years later now. But that's what they went and did. The singer and the guitarist started that band, and Neck fizzled apart. And I went to rehab and came out doing hip hop and hardcore.
How old were you when you went to rehab?
I would say 30, no, probably 28, 29.
And what was going on? What was going on in your life? What were you doing?
There's a lot of heroin in the picture.
Yeah.
And, all sorts of different drugs. But that was the main addiction thing. And, went upstate to a program for 2 years. It was crazy military style program, one of those behavior modification programs that psychologically, they really try to get in your head and mess with you. But it's a weird program too. I'd say 80% of it is people that are mandated there from jail. So they get arrested. They decide, hey, man, I'm not a dealer. I'm an addict too. Then they offer them a bid. Hey, if you do the rehab for 3 years, you won't have, a heroin record sale on your record. So they would take the rehab. So there was very few people that were there voluntary to get clean on their own,
Yeah, I did a intensive outpatient before. I was basically paying them to drug test me because I thought it would keep me clean. It didn't work.
Yeah, that didn't work. No.
And most people there are mandated, so it just wasn't for me. Did you find the thing you went to upstate helpful? Did it work for you?
It kind of worked for me in a way. I don't know. I don't know if anything else would have worked. I would like to think something else would have worked because it was pretty brutal, and you don't wish for anyone to have to go through that. But maybe that's what it takes sometimes to really turn things around and get into your head. Like I said, I'll never come back here again. I'd rather be dead on the street, but I'm not doing this again.
Yeah.
So you have one other choice is to get your shit together, and that's pretty much what I did.
Because I went to detox once, and I was like, I only want to do this once. I could also only afford it once, so
yeah,
there wasn't another chance to do it.
It really stresses out your body a lot, going through detoxes and withdrawals and stuff. It's not worth it for your health. You don't realize any of that in the moment, but as we get older now, you're like, holy shit, definitely shouldn't be here.
Yeah, exactly. So, what's your deal now? Are you clean? Are you sober? Did you stop everything?
I still smoke a little weed and could have a glass of wine, but no more of snorting anything up my nose or any of the hard stuff. It's all.
That's the key.
Yeah.
No, I had to quit everything because it was all tied together. So if I did one thing, I was going to do another thing and then do another thing. And I couldn't do it anymore. It was, it just really, it's exhausting. It runs down your life. It becomes your entire life. And once I was able to finally put it all down, I was able to actually focus on stuff I want to do.
When you go look back and you realize you wasted 10 years and you're a creative person, all you want to do is create, So since then I've been go. I want to do stuff, and obviously you're always finding yourself and changing throughout life, growing into different styles and genres. And, it's kind of I ended up here with the Phantom Eye guys.
Yeah, that's all I do now is creative pursuits, and I love it. That's what I always wanted. I'd be high in some practice space trying to start a band that wouldn't work out, and I'd be like, man, I just want to be in a band. I just want to write music, and it would never work out, and now it is. So it's like a dream come true almost.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So the Phantom Eye, when does it get started, and how does it get started?
I'd say somewhere around, I don't know, I think it was 2017. Maybe I put out a Craigslist ad, met up with this dude, Andrew Lewis, who was our original guitar player. Me and him were jamming a bunch at my house. I was living in Midwood, Brooklyn at the time. Had a whole house rented with our own little rehearsal recording studio in the basement. And we did play a whole bunch, and eventually he was like, I had this old Fender Rhodes keyboard down there that was my great grandfather's, and I never really had it hooked up to anything. And I'm like, he had mentioned one time that he had a buddy that he knows that plays that keyboard, and he was coming to move to New York from Nashville or South Carolina. I'm not sure where he was living at the time. But eventually he came through, and he's like, oh, my buddy is here now. I'm like, well, let's jam with him. I've been dying to get someone to jam. And I figured, the Rhodes keyboard, the Fender Rhodes, is the same one that they use on like the Portishead records. And maybe the dude from the Doors was using it. Many different bands have used the sound. So we figured that with like a little bit of, distortion or overdrive or fuzz would be like a cool, a Sans amp pedal through the keyboard might really be something different. And that's when we met Rob. And me, Rob, and Andy were jamming for about a couple of years. And Andy was furthering himself in his schooling and decided he wanted to move to South Carolina and pursue his career, and that's when me and Rob were like, all right, so, what's going to happen here? I mean, it sucked because Andy, me and Rob were really finding our sound at that time. And that's around the time that Rob brought up Pete Ross. And I didn't really know too much about Pete before that. But Rob had known him because Rob's brother was also in bands with Pete. So these guys all know each other. Like, they know more people. I mean, Rob, not even being from New York, knows more people than I do in the scene. These guys just know everyone. We got together a couple of times and started playing with Pete, and it started to, we started to find our sound, and he started to revamp some of the stuff that Andy was playing and maybe throw in a couple of his own ideas, or maybe play close to exactly what Andy was playing in some spots, if that's what the song called for. We weren't trying to force anything. And it was supposed to be an instrumental band, and we went into the studio to record, and we recorded it, and then we were listening back, and I guess we wanted to see if anyone could come up with anything vocally. And that's when I gave all the songs to Pete, and he came by a couple of weeks later and belted out Ease the Pain. And that was the first song we heard lyrics to. And I'm like, wow, dude, you could sing really good. And it sounds like it really complements the music. And those are really cool melodies you wrote. And I really like how you're not just singing with the guitar parts. You wrote your own thing, and it was like complementing the music. And that was the main thing of what we were saying is, if we're going to get a singer, it's got to complement it. If it's making it worse or, taking away from it, we didn't want that. And Pete's vocals were making it way better. So we just took our time with it and did one song at a time. And, when someone's good at writing melodies and vocals and lyrics, you don't press them too much. So I kind of let him do his own thing and take his time. And when he's ready and comes with the song, we come in here and track it real quick. But that's pretty much how the band got its start.
Yeah, the debut EP, Chromesthesia. So it was all, I read that it was instrumental. So it was all done. And then how did you guys decide, like, hey, let's try to add some vocals?
When we wrote, we kind of left the parts open. So even though there wasn't vocals, this would be considered the chorus and this would be considered the verse. We always write like that, kind of, even if, in talking terms at least, even if there's not going to be vocals there, we kind of like to leave some room in case there does want to be. And all the time, you could always go back and edit a couple of measures out or add measures in if you want, in the recording process, if it comes to that. But for the most part, Pete just worked his way in there and sounded like he kind of wrote this stuff with us, and that wasn't the case. He wrote it all afterwards, and we recorded it all in my bedroom.
That's got to be nice to have a home recording setup too, especially in New York City, right? Because I still slog down to the studio and practice everything there and record in studios. I still haven't sat down and figured out the home studio stuff yet. I have the stuff, I just haven't figured it out yet.
It's good. It's so fast and so convenient, but there's always a roadblock. Like I can't remember a time where I've had something to do and I'm like, all right, let's turn everything on, and you can't just like, it's always something like, what now? Okay, why is that not working? Why isn't this being recognized? It's always, but I feel like that's the nature of it at this point. If it was super easy, probably everybody would be putting out more bad music, right?
Exactly. Well, we have the new EP, Cymatic Waves, which is excellent. Everyone out there, if you're a fan of post-metal, post-rock, on the heavier side, there's some good psychedelic moments, lighter moments, heavier moments. It's a good mix of all that stuff. When did production on the EP begin? When did you guys start writing it?
I'd say we wrote some of those songs during the pandemic. We didn't get to record till the end of 2022. And one of our members had a death of someone really close to him and his family. So that was like a while where we just were like kind of dormant for, I'd say, maybe 6-7 months. Really didn't get much done. And then we slowly started getting into it. And now it seems like the momentum is rolling again. And that's why we put out a lot of the songs as singles over time, because we didn't want to lose whatever traction we were creating, and have people waiting around and then just release something in one shot. And nowadays it's said to better to release things in singles, keep people coming back and keep people's interest. We were hoping there's actually 6 songs recorded to this, and it wound up being 4 songs, but we would rather put out 4 songs, all meat and potatoes, no filler, you know what I mean, and keep it that way.
Right. Yeah, I was talking to someone about this recently. I forget who, but they were like, yeah, nowadays you just have to constantly put stuff out, like constantly put out music, constantly put out content, because there's just an overflow of it from every place. Like I forget about bands. I completely forget about bands because I'll be focused on whatever's happening on the podcast. And then I'm like, wait, this band put out a record? How did I not know about that?
It's true. There's a lot going on right now. Everybody's putting out records all the time. I mean, just go to any one of these blogs or magazine, webzines or whatever, and you look at like reviews for today or new releases. There's like 10 a day. It's insane.
So we have the new EP out right now, Cymatic Waves. What is the plan? Do we want to get out and tour? Do we want to play locally as much as we can? What's the plan?
Actually, locally, we try to play as least as we can. We try to play locally twice a year. So that way it's an event and people want to come. A lot of friends and family come out, and I'd rather pack the room out 2 or 3 times a year than be playing 15 times a year and people get tired of hearing you and seeing you. But we do want to get to the surrounding states. I think we have a really original live show. And I think if we get in front of some new people on the right shows, people will definitely be interested in the music. But it's just really hard now at the age that we're all at. Our keyboard player lives in Philly now. So we, have a hard time getting together and moving things forward. And, it's hard when you're first starting out and you're trying to figure out what bands to play with. And, you don't want to go out to Philly and play in front of 2 or 3 people. But at the same time, you got to start somewhere. But building relationships behind the scenes with other bands, trading shows, say, hey, we'll have you guys out here, and maybe they hit you back and put you on a show out there where it's a packed show and they're headlining, and you start to build across the fan bases and build your own fans that way.
Right. Yeah, it's hard. It's hard. My band is just getting started, and I was trying to put together a show which was impossible to find a venue and to find bands who want to play and just put it all together. But it ended up working out. But it is hard. Not impossible, but hard.
And venues are also booking 4 to 5 months in advance now. So anytime you're calling anywhere and you're like, hey, I'm looking for next month is Saturday, it's not even a possibility that you're going to get that date, especially not at the better venues. So you have to really plan ahead. You know, you have to plan out your year and try to come up with some sort of goal and game plan and say, hey, these weeks we're going to keep open for trying to put something together, and then work towards that 6 or 7 months in advance and try to set it up. It's a lot of work, and we're all on our own. You know, we don't have any funding behind us or label, so everything we've done has been out of pocket. And you know, you don't mind getting out there and going out there. And luckily, all the shows we have done, we've made some money, and we haven't like lost anything or played bad shows yet. So I think we're all a little worried about that too. Like, we don't want to just take anything. If we've had such a nice run, I think we've only done 10 or 11 shows, but they've all been really nice shows with on good bills with great bands and good crowds. And you know, it's it's a little nerve wracking to step into another state and see how we do. But I think this year it's going to happen. We're definitely going to try to get out there and do some surrounding stage shows, little weekend runs.
Yeah, we want to do the same thing. I did catch your gig with Spotlights. That was a good one when St. Vitus was still up. Was that at St. Vitus? Yeah.
It was.
Yeah. Talk about some of the elements with the live show. You have like special lighting and visual stuff too, right?
Yeah. So with this band, playing pretty simple stuff. So I'm playing to a click track all the time. So we decided if we're playing to a click track, why not create a whole bunch of MIDI tracks that are telling lights to do different things and visuals to do different things. And then I'm always been big into visuals and projection and visual art type of stuff. So, and editing video as well. So I started getting into like audio reactive visuals. So, you know, whatever's happening also looks like it's moving and reacting to the music. So there's a bunch of different dudes that inspired me over the years. I saw this one band play at Brooklyn Made. They were called Wand, and they had this guy, the Mad Alchemist liquid light show, and this guy had those plates with liquid between them, different dyes, and he would spin the plates, and there would be a high-speed camera over the plates, and that would be projected onto the screen. And he had like 5 plates going at once, and the visuals were just unbelievable. I think I took some mushrooms for that one, and I was, telling myself, I'm like, wow, I really got to learn a little bit more about this stuff, and started diving into some programs. And Rob, our keyboardist, does a lot of the MIDI programming. So I started having him send me some tracks of different stuff, and then setting up all this these lighting programs and this program called Resolume we use a lot. And we built some crazy visual shows that are all self-automated by themselves from beginning to end. No one needs to sit there and man the computer or run the light show, and it's going to be perfect every single time. But I would say it took a lot of time, about 1.5 years of like building behind the scenes and making it better and constantly working on it as your daily art project, where you don't really get that much time to play your instrument anymore, and you're just worried about this type of crap for a while. And you know, if you're one of those people, you could get through, but if not, you're gonna have a hard time, because it's video VJ programs and lighting DMX programs are definitely they were painful to use in the past, but they're getting a little bit more intuitive now. So it's definitely a whole thing, though. It's a whole separate headache. Sometimes I feel like I'm jumping around a lot between like a recording program, video editing program, live visuals. It's a lot, you know, and your main thing is supposed to be your instrument. And although it's fun, sometimes you got to get back into just playing, you know what I mean? And that's where I'm at right now. We finally finished the EP, and I want to just go play the drums for hours, come up with some cool beats, and start jamming with the guys again.
Nice. Well, the EP is out there now. It's called Cymatic Waves. Make sure everybody checks it out. And Larry, this was great. I'm looking forward to seeing you again when you play around here. And thank you so much for coming on the show.
Oh, yeah. Thanks a lot, Keith. It's been a pleasure.